the Stallionesearch Film of the Month. Brought to you by Horse Logic. Visit them at horselogicpro.com.
In late September, I put out a film about setting up a hypothetical partnership called Millionaires to Be Partners that took a hypothetical bankroll of $100,000 to purchase 4 horses in partnership from 4 top quarter horse yearling sales across the country. If you haven't seen that film, this continuation and conclusion of that story won't make much sense. And you can find part 1 on Stallionesearch.com in the video section, or perhaps on Stallionesearch's Facebook page. The October film here is part 2 of that story, and we'll get right to it after these words from Horse Logic. Brought directly to you at the barn, Horse Logic, equine supplement products scientifically formulated for the competitive horse and chosen by top professionals in the quarter horse racing world to help you achieve success. From sail-fitting yearlings to putting powerful muscle growth into a runner, Horse Logic gives horsemen the advantage of proven supplements for peak performance. The hottest name in supplements in the quarter horse racing world, Horse Logic Professional. Why don't you see more partnerships in quarter horse racing? Well, we talked to retired thoroughbred trainer Hal Wiggins about the prominence of partnerships on the thoroughbred side.
Well, one good advantage of it is that one person could probably not afford the price of a young horse and then paying all the bills and all. But when they get with other people and pay a portion of it, maybe 10% or 15%, they can get involved in the racing world, and they have just as much fun as if they own the whole horse. They could go to the paddock, they go to the barn in the morning, visit with the trainer and all, and it's a real good concept to get people in our industry that could not have gotten into it. And really when that partnership or syndicate wins a race, they're just as excited as if they've owned the whole horse by themselves, and so they get the whole feel of it, but it doesn't cost them as much. And we see a whole lot more of it on the thoroughbred side for some reason than the quarter horse side, but maybe you don't have enough people that could, in the thoroughbred world, that could get into it by themselves. So it gets people in our industry that otherwise wouldn't have the pride of ownership that they do in the quarter horse world.
To get caught up on where we're at, I went to the Louisiana-bred quarter horse yearling sale in Kinder, Louisiana in early August and was aiming to spend around $20,000 on a yearling, but really liked a Jess Louisiana Blue filly that only went for $8,000. Well, the idea was to use that excess $12,000 at the Ruidoso Select Yearling Sale during the Labor Day weekend. As mentioned in part 1, the idea was to use 40% of the budget for a yearling at Ruidoso due to the prices usually being higher, with the creme de la creme of quarter horse yearlings being offered for sale on the mountain. So off to Ruidoso I went. Now, there are some horsemen that form an opinion on specific sires and don't care what the individual looks like. They just don't care for the offspring from that sire line. And I'm no different. I tend to gravitate towards sire lines that I'm fond of, and perhaps quite more forgiving of yearlings with issues if the top sire lines are present and that I'm fond of them. The idea came to me when looking at some of the top picks on my list. Those top picks looked great when I went to look at them for the most part, but they were just going to be outside that $40,000 to $52,000 range that I was hoping to stay within. Now, those that have been around looking at yearlings amongst the top horsemen in the world can attest that they have all seen some of the most crooked-legged horses win some of the biggest races in the world. But the idea is to get the best conformationally sound individual you can, and hopefully at the cheapest price possible. I went through the Ruidoso sales catalog looking for one of those yearlings with that stellar bloodline that I'm very fond of, but maybe exhibited conformation defects that some horsemen would see and scratch off their list due to the problems they are visually seeing. I'm hoping to steal a top-sired individual for a much lower rate due to issues that are present in his conformation. And as mentioned before, the highlight of the Ruidoso sale for me is to go through the yearlings with one of the sharpest eyes for yearlings that I've run across in retired thoroughbred trainer Hal Wiggins. He and I look through as many yearlings as we can throughout the Ruidoso sale until they start looking the same. And I tell you, I'm trying to absorb all of his knowledge as much as I could possibly retain. And even though Hal understood my logic of overlooking something that I probably would not have gone with in a yearling prior to this project in order to get more pedigree for a lower price due to conformation flaws, it's a bit outside of his comfort zone. It goes against the grain of steering clear of these types of horses with these conformation flaws, because your goal is to look for an individual that looks like an athlete but is built straight enough that the animal has a better chance of staying sound through training and running. As a recap of the financial situation, $8,000 was spent in Louisiana on a $20,000 budget there, so I'm going to use the additional $12,000 left over in Ruidoso, pushing my budget to $52,000 able to be spent on one yearling there, and then that will leave me $20,000 at both Heritage Place and California at the Salle equine sale to spend the budgeted $100,000 amount. And I have a running idea of what yearlings I'll go towards ahead of the sale because I utilize the sales results tool in the sales section of Stallionesearch.com. Now, the information is there on Stallionesearch. It's just time consuming to track it all down. But I equate it to going into a buying situation blindly if you perhaps don't know what the going rate for a horse with the similar bottom side had gone for in previous sales. With that process handled, Hal Wiggins and I sifted through the finest yearlings in quarter horse racing, looking for something within our price range. And we stumbled upon several fitting within that parameter, but there was one yearling in particular that caught my eye. He had a racy look about him and he really looked like a racehorse to me. Hip 110, an apolitical Jess colt out of the Shazoom mare Fast Prize Zoom. Now, she's a Futurity winner herself, and she produced a Futurity winner in Jess Prize Me, winner of the West Texas Futurity. Of all the apolitical Jess colts that I had seen this summer, he contained many of those apolitical Jess qualities that he throws in his offspring, aside from the fact that this one had some conformation issues. One of these issues, I thought he was a little bit over at the knee. A conformation flaw, yes, but far lesser than its polar opposite of back at the knee. Now, several world-class trainers in quarter horse racing have told me that even though the jockeys seem to have the most issue with that conformation defect, it's something that they can live with.
You know how we've looked at a lot of yearlings over here, and one of the things about this select yearling sale that we saw even last year, the prices are, usually higher. This is the cream of the crop. This is our Keeneland sale, the first 3 days of Keeneland, and it's all encompassed in these 400. So what I was trying to think of coming here and doing is trying to get as much value as I could on something on the page as well as the individual as I could for, something where I assume prices are going to be higher. So I'm almost willing to overlook some of the characteristics we probably shouldn't overlook. And one of them that pops out is hip 110. And the reason why is, just down the page, there's those yearlings down the page haven't brought a whole lot at the sale. So I'm expecting this horse to go for fairly cheap. I'm really high on the sire apolitical Jess, and it's out of a Shazoom mare. And on the bottom side there, on the dam side, she just throws runners. There's just no other way to say it. So,
right,
but
yeah.
Obviously this horse has got issues.
Right, sure does. He's out in the front left pretty good. Even when he walks, he doesn't correct it. It's a little bit narrow in the front for a quarter horse. Overall, when you look at him from the side, he looks pretty good. He's well balanced, got a nice shoulder, nice rear end. So, and there's some things that even though they have these faults, that doesn't mean they're not going to run.
Right.
So what you're looking for in your price range, this might be a good prospect because
right.
his sire is a heck of a sire.
Right.
This dam is very good, which is important in the quarter horse world.
Right.
And so he might be a good price. He might be in your price range.
Right.
But even though he's got some faults, we're not saying that he can't run through them.
Right.
And especially with this sire.
One of the faults we had pointed out, he turns out a little to the left. He's probably turns out to the point that maybe we should even pass on him. And this is potentially something that other trainers are going to overlook, or they're going to cull this horse off their list because of that trait that he
right,
has.
Exactly.
So,
and that's why I think that you can probably get him in your price range. But if I was looking at him maybe to buy for someone else, I wouldn't pay a whole lot for him. But like for your prospect and all, and maybe with a syndicate or a partnership, he might be just what you're looking for, really.
So my choice has been made. I'm all in on Hip 110. If he doesn't go within my price range, I have several in the second tier later in the catalog to go for. But my fingers are crossed for this yearling going within the budgeted $52,000 I set to spend at Ruidoso. And I meant what I said earlier. Ruidoso is our Keeneland sales as it pertains to the quarter horse world. Now, Heritage Place is the place where champions are sold, and you can get so much value there in Oklahoma City. And the Louisiana yearling sale is where you can get so much value for your dollar. And Los Salle is a prestigious and fun sale to be at, but Ruidoso has long been the cornerstone of where the highest dollar yearlings are sold in this industry. And I'm hoping 110 goes undetected by most trainers because of his conformation flaw. And now that's if he goes within my price range. So the moment had arrived. Hip 110 was led into the ring, and the pedigree announcer went through the rigors of announcing the finer qualities of the yearling being offered on the page. And I'm playing with phony money, so to say here, but nevertheless I want this yearling to far exceed his purchase price when he gets on the racetrack. And there is a tinge of anxiety hitting me whether or not I'm doing the right thing with going with this Ferrari with hail damage. And I studied big buyers in the industry and their bidding process and their bidding techniques. And one of my favorite is watching AQHA World Champion Kenny Roberts when he is in a bidding war with someone on a yearling. I wasn't actually bidding on a yearling here, but I feel I have the body language of my mentor Kenny Roberts down to a T. So I got out of the Ruidoso sale well under my price range, ready to carry on to the next sale with being $26,000 under budget. 3 weeks later, I'm off to the place where champions are sold, Oklahoma City, for the Heritage Place yearling sale. The largest catalog yearling sale in our sport of quarter horse racing, with over 780 yearlings being offered in the 2018 sale over a 3-day period. And it takes quite some time to go through the plethora of yearlings being offered. I had multiple horses in the catalog that I've settled on, and even though I had $26,000 more to spend on top of the $20,000 I had budgeted, I, like everyone else, wanted the most bang for my buck. Now, with my position at Stallionesearch.com, I spent a lot of time at yearling sales, and I've noticed a pattern that horses in the very first part of the day of a sale seem to go far less because people haven't arrived yet, and horses seem to go far less at the last day or the last part of the sale because many people have left and the attendance becomes even more sparse. And I wanted to see if I could use this trend or pattern to my advantage. I really liked a brown colt by PYC Paint Your Wagon out of the Shazoom mare named Lotta Wada. She wasn't much of a runner herself, but she is quite the producer, throwing the current sire and Remington Futurity winner Lotta PYC, which is the full brother to Hip number 521, and she's produced multiple other stakes winners. This big strapping colt looked the part. He was a little light in the rear for me, but nothing that would just throw me off and warrant me not to have him on my list. And with a look on Stallionesearch.com's sales search tool, I came to the sale making the assumption that he would land between $45,000 and $55,000 in price, and if I was right, he would fit perfectly within what I was able to spend on him. And the way day 2 laid out, Hip 521 was the second to the last horse to sell for the day, and so potentially I could get him for a few $1,000s less than what he would have gone for if he was in the middle of the day. Once in the sales ring, he quickly rose into the $20-something thousand range. He skipped right through the $30,000 range to the $35,000 and then into the 40s, hovered around the high 40 area, and then wound up at the $50,000 mark, receiving the final bid of $52,000 before the hammer dropped at $52,000. A little bit over my budget, but I felt it was well worth it. I am probably most excitingly hopeful for this yearling from all the other yearlings purchased thus far in this project. And then it was home to the Dallas area, and then only a week and a half I was on a plane bound for LAX for the Los Al Equine sale. A quick look at the budget shows I have spent $86,000 thus far. I originally planned on going to Los Alamitos with $20,000 to spend on a yearling. So far I'm not too terribly off course. The Los Al Equine sale has 333 horses listed, a mix of broodmares, yearlings, and horses of racing age over a 2-day sale. It's a last stop of the year for the true bona fide yearling sales. And at the Salle Equine Sale, you will see some horses that have already gone through previous sales, but maybe didn't reach the reserve, as well as you'll see a smaller sire list of yearlings being offered. I spent 2 days looking through these yearlings, and a friend of mine and a trainer that's in the thick of things in quarter horse racing gave me a tremendous thinking point that I pondered on for a while when I first initially looked at yearlings. He goes around looking at yearlings in the stall, not really pulling them out, and certainly not at the number of yearlings coming out of the stall as I usually look at. And when I asked him why, his answer rung true for me for the rest of the sale at least. He told me if he didn't like the horse standing in the stall, most likely he's not going to like them when they pull them out of the stall, so why bother? I found this fact resoundingly true and will apply it going forth in the yearling sales of 2019, as it will help in time management when you're looking at yearlings, especially at a big catalog like at Heritage Place. With $14,000 to spend, which isn't a lot of money when buying yearlings, I wanted to wait till the last day of the sale towards the last 40 head to try to steal a yearling with that amount of money. I was counting on the notion that towards the end of the sale you will see lower prices for more pedigree. I waited till the second day and started concentrating on horses that were within the last 40 as mentioned. That's when I came across Hip 304, a well-made, very quarter horse type daughter of Stell Corona out of a separatist mare named Plenty Good. She had produced a black type stakes winner in Goodis, but 3 foals to race, all of them were winners. But she was far more impressive on the hoof rather than on the page for sure. I couldn't really find a flaw in her visually. Like my mentor Hal Wiggins says, she almost looks like she can have a saddle on her back right now and break from the gates. So I had my fingers crossed, and I was hoping that she wouldn't be as glaring and as obvious of a choice as I felt she was.
Talking about $180,000 and stakes place winner by Kitty Up. Well good.
The bidding begun as I had hoped. It was slow going, only reaching the $3,000 mark very slowly. Then moving on to the $7,000 range, and a few bids more put it to $9,000. And then I began to worry as another bid came through and pushed it up above $10,000, and then another at $11,000. And then the last bid came through and pushed it to $12,000, and fortunately for this project, that is where it stayed, as legendary auctioneer Keith Babb brought the close to this sale of this yearling at $12,000. I was hoping that she wasn't going to be a buyback or an RNA, as I asked the consignor John Firth. No, she was a steal at $12,000, and I agreed as the sun set on this lengthy but massively educational journey through the yearling sales this summer. I came $2,000 under budget as planned, but pondered upon the $12,000 yearling purchased at Salle, the $52,000 futurity hopeful at Heritage Place, which is my front runner of high hopes for this group, as well as the filly from Louisiana that was also a bargain at $8,000, and then the Ferrari with hail damage from Ruidoso at $26,000. And of course there will be a follow-up to this film to see if perhaps I'm one of the sharpest eyes in the quarter horse yearling world, or perhaps one of the dullest of pickers among the other dull pickers. Either way, thanks for watching.